check 1 2.
Roll on like a tumbleweed. Tore up West Texas the summer I turned 18. A flat tire in El Paso couldn't stop us, you see. We made it to Rose's Cantina, tequila flowed till 3. There on a bar stool sat a fool about 85, tall and lanky, but every bit alive. It set him up, and he would knock them down. He called me over when I laid my guitar on the ground. He said, keep moving and keep your head high. Don't slow down until your feet touch the sky. It's all yours, so take it with you when you leave. Yeah, that's what Mr. Bojangles said to me. Said he used to dance down at county fairs. He loved, he lost. Said that nothing in life is fair. They keep on playing just the way you do. And don't give in to nothing, 'cause only you can walk in your shoes. So keep moving and keep your head high. Don't slow down until your feet touch the sky. It's all yours, so take it with you when you leave. Yeah, that's what Mr. Bojangles said to me. Yeah. Out here in the desert, there's nothing but lost hopes and dreams. So don't get caught up in what was supposed to be. Don't wait till it's too late. You better see yourself alone. 'Cause God forbid you end up like my dog. So keep moving and keep your head high. Don't slow down until your feet touch the some have flowers hanging down. They all go on forever, but I see them different now. As I sit in the driver's seat in silence, I believe in angels as me and Mama cried. We knew there was one with you on 288 that night. I say a prayer every time I see a sign of the road memory, 'cause it reminds me of what I could lost, what you could have been across. You say that you'll never take for granted again a sunset or a baseball game, or be scared of that first pitch, knowing everything can change in the blink of an eye. Might have opened yours, but it sure has opened mine. And I don't say enough that I love you, and I believe in angels as me and Mama cried. We knew there was one with you on 288 that night. I say a prayer every time I see a sign of the road memory, 'cause it reminds me of what I could lost, what you could have been across my heart that was almost broken. How let him leave any words unspoken, and I'll thank the Lord for keeping you down here. I believe in angels as me and Mama cried. We knew there was one with you on 288 that night. I say a prayer every time I see a sign of the road memory, 'cause it reminds me of what I could lost, what you could have been across. Thank God you're not across. They're not allowed to talk about old Dixie anymore, for fear that it might offend. Ignorance ain't always bliss, and if we just ignore it, we might end up repeating history again. Seems like the whole world has gone crazy. The line between right and wrong is getting hazy. And every time you turn on the news, everything is black and blue. Some folks matter, other folks don't. We can all try to
We are back. Sorry. Had to use the restroom. Seriously. Alright. This was not the end, and yet it felt like it could have been a strong ending. So we're going to continue. Bring it on. Check 1, 2. Check. He was still in a deep sleep. It all seemed ablaze in a mad, fiery red. Unbearable, idle thoughts, incessant obstinacy, melancholy sights, gloomy, bittersweet talk. Hold up. I need to check something. I'm not getting... That's why. Problem fixed. I was wondering what was going on. Fickle wickedness born of human interaction, namely the voice of a forsaken coexistence. This, however, was the scenery of a world far removed from that. If there were those praying, this was paradise. Then there was likely also those lamenting it as the underworld. In a decade, or perhaps longer, this would all change, but for now the autumn leaves remained yet untrampled by human souls. It was the scenery he knew well. Life in the mountains was humble and modest. There was no conspicuous buildings among the wilderness he called home. They gathered and stockpiled only what they needed to survive without pillaging the land. Serpentine trails could be seen woven through the fields, and the stone steps leading to the summit were obscured by the forest, only visible once upon them. Mountain inhabitants probably intended it that way. There was no sign of mankind's exploitation among the mountain landscape. He suddenly remembered that this was the season he liked the most, or rather, it suited him the most. There was so much to be done to prepare for winter. Whenever he had a free moment, he would make his way toward the mountaintop, gazing idly at the setting sun while breathing deep in the crisp autumn air was probably the second favorite of his daily joys. This is about what's-his-face. I want to say jeez, I cannot speak English. I want to say Shizuki. I do not remember his name. It's been a week. Who trusts me to keep track for a week? It relaxed him, the cold but comforting wind at dusk, and the way the sunset dyed the peaks of vibrant crimson. Not 2 months had passed since coming down from the mountains, and already it pained him that the memories had begun to fade. Someone once told him that memories fade every day, so the best you do is make as many new ones as possible. That is not English. I don't know what that was, but that was not English. So the best you do is make as many new ones as possible. Recollections grew hazy. A new place to live meant the beginning of a new life. He wasn't sure if he was reluctant to let go of the scenery he'd cherished so long, or if he'd merely been spoiled by it. Despite his new home in a city surrounded by tall buildings, he felt guilty for wanting those memories alone to remain clear in his mind. Either way, my coaster's stuck. My coaster's stuck. Drink tea, people. It's good for your body. It's good for your soul. Either way, he had to make the best of a fresh start. What kind of man thinks more about where he came from than where he's going, he contemplated. This is a dream. He tried to stop himself from indulging in uncharacteristic sentimentality. It wouldn't be a dream if it was easy to understand. The moment he realized he was dreaming, angular shadows began to rise from autumn colors. They were concrete buildings, previously unknown and yet familiar to him at the same time. This was how his current life was washing away his memories. Struggle as he might, there was no stopping the degradation of the human memory or impressions. It was merely a fact of life. By nature, humans lived in the present over the past. Eventually, even his most cherished memories would be swallowed up by the buildings. It was neither cruel nor heartless. If they were sure to disappear, then for now he would content himself with dreaming about the memories he could clearly recall. Whether in the mountains or the city, the days flew by. Yesterday's scenery was not the same as today's. And such, the look of absolute anger and disdain just washes over your image. Just, thanks. I'm enjoying peace for once, and now I've got that to look at. I love it. Thanks. She had given him no time to grieve. Distant nostalgia was beautiful, and that made it fleeting. You are no Maage Nudo, Aozaki. I can't talk my way past you. No, you can't. A faint dizziness made him close his eyes. Without sight, the mountainous landscape vanished, but in its place, a familiar voice could be heard. It was a booming voice that seemed to shake not only the mountainside he stood upon, but the entire mountain as well. And of course, Aozaki reappeared, towering in the distance. He must have been tired, he thought, diagnosing himself while he was trying to make out what she was saying. Fearing the vertigo would return if he reopened his eyes, he decided to keep them closed. Give me just a sec, I've got something. Sounded like she was arguing with someone, though the tone was all he could make out. It was violent, but certainly aggressive. Maybe she was picking a fight with another mountain across the way. He wouldn't put it past her. After all, she was a troublemaker who blew up the moon. He couldn't quite grasp the conversation. No, somehow vaguely, he had the sense that his human rights were being largely ignored. It was deeply unsettling, even for a dream. I mean, to be fair, you two just don't get along. The girl does not like you. After several minutes, it seemed that the high-impact argument ended in Aoko's victory. Then suddenly the boisterous voice faded. Praying everything would be back to normal, he opened his eyes. Ah, great, we're still here. He took a deep, slow breath. The scenery was a far cry from the nostalgic dreamscape he had just left, albeit not unpleasant either. Without a doubt, it was an amusement park. To him, he was the freshest memory. He recalled the House of Mirrors that Aozaki destroyed. This park was a flawless replica of reality, but he was the only one there. Without having to worry about anyone chasing him, he sat down on the wreckage of Kitsy's rides, looked up at the moon that should have been shut down. The winter moon shone white like a jewel. It was layered over the figure of the girl who tried to kill him. If a mage was a witch, then she'd definitely fit the bill. I don't mind being killed. It was such an absurd thing to say, but it spilled out of him so naturally. Well, maybe. That had nothing to do with witches or magecraft. There was an echo in the gaps of his heart. If she had not spoken those words, then he would not have responded as he did. In that moment, what had Aozaki said to him? As he tried to remember, his deep slumber drew to an end, and with it, his chance to find answers he so wished he could find. Then, Sojudo, that's his name! Sojudo. I will not remember that come next week. Why we trust me with my memory, I will never know. But it is terrible. Sojudo woke up in an unfamiliar room, gasping. not because the plush mattress he was on was softer than his apartment's cheap futon, or because everything from the carpet to the wallpaper looked expensive. Bewildered, he tried to catch his breath. What is she doing here? What is she doing here and not me being dead? How am I alive if she's right there? Girl tried to kill us! She was the cause of his surprise. Mine too! The moment Sojiro's eyes snapped open, there she was, the girl dressed in black, sitting at his bedside. I feel like something bad's about to happen. I'm calling it now. Somebody's gonna end up with a knife in their throat. The silence was deafening. Still supine on the bed, Sojiro gazed at her. His impulse was to sit up, but he refrained, thinking it might be rude to be staring at the person sitting next to him. She was just sitting there on a chair, dressed in black, modest clothes. Still, she projected an air that was anything but plain. Her monochrome outfit evoked indescribable elegance. Like a costume handmade just for her from the finest fabrics, it was enough to inspire poetic sentiments, even in Sojiro. The girl continued to sit, completely motionless. Without realizing it, Sojiro had stopped breathing. Genuine astonishment had him captivated. Don't do her job for her! If you're gonna die, don't do it yourself. Unless you're like ancient and you've lived a good life. But please do not. Such beauty. It was the first time he had ever thought to use such a simple, plain expression to describe another human being. She was the daffodil in perfect bloom. Daffodil? Hold up, of all the flowers to pick, you chose daffodil. I'm insulted for her. You could have chosen many different things. Daffodil's up there with, like, dandelion. Basic. Rose. Could you pick anything more elegant? Or the ideal female form seen only in dreams. This quality was something to be cherished and admired in her. It was different from Aozaki's blindingly radiant vitality. After all, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And there was no way this girl would be allowed such a happy ending. Her life was a solitary fable of someone who left the world in exactly the same way they entered it. With her humanity stolen at birth, hers was an existence not of this world. The more beautiful something was, the more tragic its fate. True, true. The most beautiful flowers tend to get plucked. Growing up in the mountains, this was not something Sojiro was taught, but something he learned from experience. So you were taught it through experience. It looks like she's sleeping. Sojiro turned his head as though he was being lured in. He knew it was rude to stare, but he couldn't fight his instincts. Then... This time, his heart actually skipped a beat. She was not asleep after all. Expressionless, she was merely watching over him while he recovered. Sojiro froze, unable to turn his head away or think of something clever to say. It was like staring into her eyes turned him to stone. Perhaps because of her delicate features, she looked somewhat younger than him. On the other hand, her tranquil expression made him feel like she was older. Jet black hair, just to her shoulders. Her large eyes were like onyx stones, matching her hair. Devoid of emotions, her gaze stayed fixed on Sojiro. Even after their eyes met, she did not turn away. He wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. It was not unlike a frog being stared down by a snake. Nevertheless, he just could not bring himself to say something. See, that's a better comparison. Thank you! Granted, I'm like 99% certain frogs aren't eaten by snakes. I've been wrong before, though. But yeah, that's a better expression. Additionally, matter how carefree Sojiro might have been, he was painfully aware that this girl was as powerful as Aoko. No, she's more powerful. GTFO, please. Just GTFO. Run unless she says, I'm not gonna hurt you. For the love of God, please. Less talkative to be sure, but still powerful. Objectively, the scene was not unlike that of someone nursing a bedridden stranger. He had no idea what she may have been thinking about, but it seemed to him this harsh silence might last forever. All he could say for sure was that the quiet did not appear to bother her in the slightest. It was like some bizarre form of punishment. If this was some kind of test from Aozaki, if this is some kind of test from Mahoutsukai, it sure is elaborate. You have a vivid imagination. That's... What? Yeah, I'm going to test you by letting you live, and you're going to stay in the room with the person who just tried to kill us both. This is a wonderful test. I hate it. He thought, keeping his eye on the girl. He felt like a moment he turned his head and blinked, or she might stab him in the chest with a hidden blink. See, that's more likely. And not because his imagination was running away with him. In the stifling silence, it was only natural that Sojiro would think back on what had happened in the amusement park, and it made him uneasy. Finally, this guy has just... His thought process is actually on point for some reason. For once. Thank you. But stronger than any anxiety was his fascination with the girl. Her slender frame and milky white skin, the chill of her guarded stare, the warmth of her lingering femininity. It was the mixture of those two latter qualities that was almost magical. He stared at her for so long he began to get the feeling that they had met somewhere before. Sometime before the conflict at Kitsuland. He could not quite put his finger on it, but he was sure he had seen her previously. I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but... His voice shattered the frozen silence in the room. He almost felt sorry for making noise as he spoke out to her. But they could not very well just sit and stare at each other forever. Though he might have been the only one thinking they were staring. And perhaps she thought they were glaring at each other. One is staring, one is glaring. You're both right, but you're both very wrong. Where am I? And who might you be? She narrowed her eyes slightly. Dare desu ka? Doko desu ka? Though apparently not out of offense. There was no response. Just as he was thinking it would have been better to keep quiet, she silently raised her hand. This is yours. Is it not? Her voice was cold but melodic. A white piece of cloth was wrapped in her fingers. There was no need to tell him what it was. He was conscious enough to recognize his own possessions. Sojiro sat speechless as she tossed it to him. Picking it up, he wrapped it around his neck. Does Aoko know about that? He looked away in response to her blunt question, distracted by something unrelated. She called Aoko Aozaki by her given name, which led him to believe that the mountain Aoko had argued with in his dream was actually the girl beside him. I'm not sure. As sincerely as he could, he answered without presumption. There are things that should be known, and things that need not be. There are also things that should be told, and other things that must not be. Sojiro was not exactly sure what that she was referring to, however. But maybe it's better that way. He smiled slightly at her question. Perhaps impressed by his response, the overwhelming pressure in the room dissipated noticeably. Or maybe she had been more nervous that he was the entire time, projecting the image that his room was her domain a tad too strongly. The tension faded. Sojiro tried to sit up and prop his arm beneath him. Now that they were talking, it seemed awkward to stay lying down. However, his body felt strange as he tried to move, and it surprised him how difficult it was to sit up. took everything he had just to raise his upper body to a sitting position.
あれ、洋服のままだ。
Eh? I'm still in my clothes. As he threw the covers back, he tilted his head
申し
quizzically.
訳ない。こんないい布団なのに、これじゃ不釣り合いだ。
I'm sorry. This is such a nice bed, too. I shouldn't be in my clothes under the sheets. What a waste of a good bed. Your priorities are not in order. They're in the worst of possible orders, and I don't understand why these people's priorities are in the orders they are. What is this guy's thought process? She stared at him, not expecting him to complain about not wearing pajamas while sleeping. Somehow it appeared that he had done something to surprise her. You mean besides not make sense like he has this entire game? This dude surprises people by not having his priorities in order.
なんでだ。
But why?
何もしてないぞ。
I didn't do anything. Pouting a bit at the unwarranted curiosity, he turned to face her. Although he was still mostly laying down, it was at least a more dignified position.
それで、さっきの続きだけど。
Any chance you'll tell me? Indeed, he needed to find out where he was and who she was before anything else. Actually, the more he thought about it, what happened at the amusement park, the more he got a sinking feeling in his stomach. Perhaps finally getting through to her, she calmly moved her arm from behind her back when... Once again, they silently locked eyes. Thump, thump, thump. There was a startling sound of rapidly approaching footsteps. They both had a pretty good idea of who it was. Alice! You promised! Just as expected, Aoka Awazaki burst through the doors with a thunderous roar. Girl's got some hearing! The girl was running this way? Are you part cat? She entered wearing her school uniform, her long hair flowing behind her. Her breathing was heavy, her forehead was wrinkled by a scowl granting her demonic appearance. Alice! The girl named Alice scowled slightly in response. She may have even let a sigh of disappointment slip out. Aoko, home early, I see. Her calm voice was a polar opposite of Aoko's. Needless to say, her voice dripped with brazen coldness. That's because I know you all too well. Over the past 2 years, I've come to expect how quickly you jump to conclusions. You might act mild-mannered, but as soon as things don't go your way, the veil drops. Oh dear, you make it sound so scandalous. Effortlessly, she brushed aside Aoko's jab. In doing so, Sojuro had the distinct impression that she no longer even realized he was in the room. Let that record show that I've lost count of how many times you've gone back on your word. I'm tired of hearing the same old story after the fact. I know I said I would leave it to you, but after careful consideration, I decided to take care of it myself. I may not have come to terms with your short fuse, but the least you can do in return is to trust your partner to set things right, no? You're right. We wouldn't be partners otherwise. Though, you're hardly the one to talk after unilaterally deciding our plan from here on out. We've been over this already. We won, okay? Besides, who was the one who said we should let him live if he escaped? Yet again, you've gone back on your word, Alice. Oh, don't tell me. Next you'll be saying, that's the reason you can't let sleeping dogs lie. Alice frowned slightly and fell silent. Her housemate seemed to have struck a nerve that Alice herself didn't know was there. Anyway, we agreed to decide what to do with him when he wakes up after hearing him out, right? Stop trying to flip the script every time my back's turned. Speaking of which, aren't you supposed to be at school? It's noon already. I remembered you only had your school's end of term ceremony today, so I told them I had to leave early for personal reasons. This is so warped. I have finals coming up. For goodness sake. Aoko grumbled more to herself than anyone else in the room. Then she locked eyes with Alice. Or more accurately, they glared daggers at each other. These two just really are done with each other's bull. Just 100% done with their bull. Also, if finals are coming up, you should be at school? Because you are very clearly not showing trust to her, the trust you are asking her to show to you. I get it, she tried to kill you. But for the love of God, would you please just quit this cat fighting? You two are too cute together. The room had become tense once again, and it felt like a fight could break out at any moment. With no way to escape, Sojiro had no choice but to sit and watch. But then, the electric silence that seemed like it would last forever suddenly broke about a minute later. Apparently the sort of clash was an everyday occurrence. I'll be in the drawing room. Explain the circumstances to him. Watching her go, Sojiro cocked his head. In her hand was what could only be described as a fruit knife? He had no other words to describe the tool she was clutching. Yes, they are still trying to kill him. Alice, I hate to ask, but what's in your hand? Aoko asked Alice as she walked past. A dagger. What else? Alice answered expressionlessly before briskly walking out of the room. Sojiro thought it best not to think too deeply about the scene he had just witnessed. No, that's the one you should be thinking about, because this girl very clearly still wants you dead. At any rate, the girl in black had withdrawn, and along with her the feeling of tension, leaving a bedridden Sojiro alone with Aoko still dressed for school. From Sojiro's perspective, there was a perfect chance to get answers to his ever-growing list of questions. My head's spinning, Aozaki. That's it. I'll explain everything in order, so just shut up and listen. I see the facial paralysis is gone, and your breathing has stabilized. Looks like you're through the worst of it. She nodded satisfied as she took a seat. How do you feel? A bit sluggish, he answered meekly, dropping his shoulders. He opened and closed his left hand a few times, but moving his fingers felt slow and awkward. It was clear he was still in a bad shape. Meanwhile, Aoko was blinking her eyes in wonder. Or was it admiration? Between Alice and Aoko, Sojiro did not know which of the girls was harder to read. Well, you're bound to feel a bit sluggish. Lying in bed for 2 days straight would make anyone feel weak. But I never thought you would be well enough to speak. You're a lot tougher than you looked. 2 days? It's been 2 days. Don't worry about the school. I submitted a notice of absence. In the meantime, Alice and I dispelled the gander curse and dumped the poem. Sojiro nodded at the word curse as if recalling it suddenly. It was all coming back to him now. What's wrong? You look troubled by something. I just forgot everything that really happened is all. Was I really asleep for 2 days? Getting cursed is pretty scary. You're pretty cool as a cucumber. You're as cool as a cucumber, aren't you? It's as if 2 days on death's door hasn't changed you a bit. Do you realize you are one step away from becoming a vegetable for the rest of your life? Wait, just a second. Was it really that bad? It was. I guess you're proof that ignorance is bliss after all. Anyway, what's done is done. Be sure to thank Alice later. I couldn't have lifted the curses without her help. Sometimes bliss is overrated.
けど、
Oh,
アリスっていう
and
のは
yeah,
さっきの子
you said the
か
name Alice.
遊
Was
園
that
地で
girl Alice?
その
Was she the one who,
俺たちを
you know,
殺そうと
tried to
した
kill us at the amusement park?
彼
I'll
女
replied that it
ずっ
was.
とそこに座ってたけ
She
ど
was sitting by my side for ages.
Koko wa
Is this her
kanojo no
room or
bureau.
something? Sojiro scanned the room again. He was not accustomed to sleeping on anything other than a futon, and the room looked especially foreign to him.
うんここはただの客室
No,
長
it's
い
just
こ
a
と使
guest
ってな
room.
かったから埃
It
だら
hasn't
け
been
でし
used
ょ
in forever, hence the dust over
それ
everything.
よりアリスと何
More
か話したの
importantly, what did you and Alice talk about? Well, we didn't
あ
really
れを
talk
会
so
話と
much
いうのは
as
ちょっと
brought his hand to his mouth and recalled the few words they exchanged. And Sojiro said calling it a conversation would be a gross overstatement. And yet, thinking back on it, it seemed like he had talked for hours, which brought an uncomfortable smile to
と
his
はいえ
face.
緊張は
But
解
it's
けたと
fine.
思うよ
I'm no
青崎
longer
がやって
worried.
くるのがもう少し
Although
遅
it
か
would
った
have
らよ
been
かった
nice if you had come a little later, Awazaki. Aoko nailed her eyes at his innocent slip of the tongue. She knew Sojiro didn't mean to treat her like a nuisance, but nevertheless she found it hard to take a full brunt of his words to her face. Even worse, she sensed she was getting used to his manner of speaking.
でもだからな
So,
のかもね
that's why she
相変わ
really
らず
do have
首
a
の
knack
皮
for
一枚
surviving
の
by the
人生を送っ
skin
て
of
る
your
わ
teeth,
あなたって
don't you? He tilted his head at her, clearly
だ
confused.
からあんた
I'm
はよっぽ
saying
どアリス好み
you
の
did
対応
something
を
to
したのよ
please Alice. That's the
Mada
reason
ikiteru.
you're still alive. Hmm? No matter how hard he tried, he could not grasp what she was getting at. You beat Snark! He decided to change the subject to something else.
ところでここはどこ
By
な
the
ん
way,
だ
where are
あ
we
の子に聞
exactly?
いても教えてくれなかった
I
け
asked the
ど
other girl, but she
青
wouldn't
崎なら
tell me.
教えてくれるだろ
You can tell me, right, Awazaki?
ここは三崎町の幽霊
You're
屋敷
inside Miyazaki infamous
正
haunted
確に
house.
は不
But
穏
you
寺
can call
邸
it
と言えばいい
the
かし
Kuonji
らね
Estate.
さっきの子不
And
穏
that
寺ア
girl,
リスの持ち家
that's
で
Alice Kuonji.
私が住んでると
This
こ
is
ろ
our
だから
mansion, which happens to be the
あの
place
後
I
あなたを
currently
こ
call
こまで
home.
持ってきたんだけど
After the
覚
other
えてない
night,
でし
I,
ょ
brought you here. You don't remember, do you? Something about the way she said that made him
ク
feel
オンジ
uncomfortable.
っていう名前は聞き覚えがあるよ
Kuonji. I've heard that name before.
よく商店
Hey, I
街でお
know.
っさん
Some
たちが
old
話
guy
して
in
た
the shopping district were
なんで
talking
も
about it.
偉いお金持ちだとかな
The
んとか
Kuonji are a rich and famous family or
Sorry.
something.
アリスの前ではご法度よ
Don't you dare say that in front of
穏便にここで
Alice.
暮らし
If
たい
you
の
want to
ね
live here in peace, that is.
うん
Confused it again, Sojiro tilted his head for what seemed like the 100th time that day. You're just gonna get carpal tunnel. Once again, he heard something that made him feel uneasy.
青崎
Azaki,
今なんて言った
did you just say
しずきくん私ね
Shizuki?
あからさまな嘘を言う人と同じこと
I
を
have
何
very
度も
little
言わせる
patience
人
for
と
liars,
察しの悪い
idiots,
人
and
には
people
容赦
that
しね
make me repeat
そのあ
myself.
たり覚えておいてね
Do your best to remember that if you want to enjoy your stay here. With her best smile, Aoko made her threatening proclamation. Needless to say, it caught Sojiro completely off guard.
気のせいならいいんだけど
I must have
君の
misheard
言
you
葉には
because I could have
俺が
sworn you said
ここに
something
住
about
む
me
ような
living here.
響きが感じられる
He shot her an honest stare of disapproval. It was the best resistance he could muster. But it was not in the slightest effective. Again, English grammar. What? But it was not in the slightest effectiveness against Aoko's overpowering, ruthless glare.
あなた自分の立場を
The
分かっ
quicker
て
you
る
understand the position you're in, the better it'll be for you.
う
You mean... He considered her words carefully. He wanted to openly express his feelings on the matter, but instead he swallowed his words and shook his head. Despite his typical inability to read people's emotion, he at least seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. It appeared that he had finally realized that it was his carefree mood that typically got on Aoko's nerves.
ああそうだったあんたに回りくどいこと言っても無駄だったわよね
I thought there was no use beating around the bush with you.
いいわ考える時
Fine,
間
I
ぐらい
wanted
あ
to
げ
give
た
you
かった
time
け
to
ど
think, but
時間もないし
we're way
はっきり
past
と言
that.
ってあげる
So I'll just come right out and
い
say
い
it.
しずきくん
Listen to me, Shizuki.
この度あなたは
As of
私た
now,
ちの
you're being
監視下
placed
に置
under
か
our
れることになり
supervision.
ました
You will be living
し
here
ばらく
together
は
with
ここで
us
一緒
for
に
the time
も
being.
ちろん生殺与奪の
Naturally,
権
I
利は
reserve the
こ
right
ち
to
らにあ
decide
ると
whether
い
you
う
live
条件で
or die. The blatant tyranny of her voice caused him to sputter. He wished that she would stop smiling in an attempt to make it seem any less outrageous.
一緒に住むって
Live
大崎と
together with you? It was not the faint expectation of living under the same roof with Aoko that had him flustered. Rather, he was genuinely concerned about his own safety. Regardless of how good-natured he was, it seemed he finally had come to grips with the fact that he just escaped death.
とんでもない冬眠前の熊と
You
一緒
can't
に
be
暖を取る
serious.
ようなもん
That's
だ
like seeking warmth next to a bear before it goes into hibernation. Aoko agreed, but as blunt a comparison as it was. It is the very honest truth. These people both just tried to kill you, and now you are living with them. That's how the Power Ranger squad is formed.
たまには的確な比喩をする
Once in a while, you have some pretty accurate
あ
metaphors,
な
you
たの
know.
言う通り下手
But
なこと
I'm
をした
glad that
り
you
決ま
figured
り
it
を
out.
破ったり
Make
し
a
たら
wrong move or break
今
a
度こ
rule,
そ息の
and
根
I'll
止める
end
かも
you.
よ
For real this time.
それとここに住んでるのは
Plus,
私とア
it's
リス
just
の
me
二
and
人だけよ
Alice
あ
you'll
の
be
子
living with.
私なんかに
She has
数
a
倍
way
常
less
識ない
common
から
sense than I do, so
気
if
を
you're
つ
not
けないと
careful,
死んじゃう
you'll
ぞ
wind up dead by her hands. Doop! Aoko was 100% serious. Oh, I believe her. I believe her. It was her sincerity that made it all more
い
believable.
やいやいや
No, 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 no. Obviously, there was no way the victim, Sojido, could
待って
accept
くれ
these terms.
俺にはちっとも
Wait a minute.
青崎が
You're
わ
not
からな
making
い
any sense,
監
Aozaki.
視するって言うけど
You say I'm under
なん
your
でそんな話に
supervision?
なってるんだ
Why is that necessary?
考
If
え
you
られ
think
る
about
範
it,
囲
I haven't done
悪いこととかして
anything
ないしそもそも
wrong,
俺を見
so
張って
there's
も
now
勝手
really,
なことなんて一
really
個も
no
ないし
point
青
in
崎の
keeping
言
an
う
eye
の
on
間
me.
違ってる
This has to be a misunderstanding.
いやそれとも魔術師っていうのは
Aren't all
みん
mages
な
like you,
青崎み
Aozaki?
たいなのか
Arrogant and selfish were the words that the harmless boy's gaze seemed to imply. Aoko felt a headache coming on. Due to his innate easygoing persona, Sojiro had not thought to question that Aoko being a mage was out of the ordinary. This dude really has not been in the city very long. He thinks this is just a Tuesday in the city.
だからあんた
That's
が
the problem.
そういう風
We
に
need to keep an eye on you so you don't go around saying things like that and blow our cover, you
や
dunce.
ってんじゃないこの常識なし
I gotta use the restroom again. Woo-wee. That is so much better. That is so much better. Alka flew out of her chair. She had been doing her best to keep her cool, but it seemed her well of patience had finally run dry. Witnessing Aoko snap, Sojo clapped his hands together.
そうか
Oh,
Aozakiが俺を
now I get
殺
it.
そうと
The
した
reason
の
you
は
tried to kill me was because
魔
you
術
have
師であ
hide
る
the
こと
fact
を
that you're a
隠さな
mage.
うんそれならわかる
Okay. If
監視
that's
する
the
のは
case, then
青
I get
崎
it.
の
You're
秘密
monitoring
の
me
こ
to
とで
protect your secret and not
俺の
taking
命
my life
云
in
々
your
はお
is
ま
your
け
way
み
of
たいなもんか
throwing me a bone.
そりゃ本質的に言えば
Those
そう
aren't
だ
words
けど
I would use, but sure, it sounds a bit harsh when you put it that way. But it's true! Where's the lie? You really are just throwing him a bone. There is no sympathy here. It's... You literally just aren't going to go and saying, hey, please keep this a secret. You are literally holding his life in his hands. In your hands. Sometimes these characters.
けど、それはあまり意味がないんじゃないか。
Isn't this all a little
学校もあるし、
unrealistic?
バイトだってあ
I
るん
have
だ。
school and work to go to. I can't stay locked up in this house all day. In an instant, Sojiro's objectively had her stumped, leaving her at a loss for words. He honestly had no idea what position he was in. To believe that he had any sort of freedom at this point was shocking to say the least. Just breathe, Aoko. Anything, this will speed things along. Aoko somehow managed to compose herself. As a matter of fact, she never had any intention of imprisoning him. Stripping him of his freedom and incarcerating him would go against their agreement anyways. Besides, if she was going to go that far, English, motherfucker, I do not speak it. Jeez, let's take two. Besides, if she was going to go that far, it would be easier just to kill him. Yeah, sure. To Aoko, letting him live meant showing a modicum of respect to Sojiro's way of life. You're not saying, well, wait, don't tell me I can't even leave this room. A light bulb went on in his head as he blurted out what he was thinking. It appeared he had finally got the grim message. Aoko looked somewhat satisfied at his dismay. Relax. Locking you up would actually be more trouble than it's worth. Your freedom was taken into consideration. To what degree you are free, you will be left to the discretion of Alice and her abilities, so you won't have to worry about that. He's got bills to pay! He has an apartment he has to pay rent on! A gloomy look fell over Sojiro's face as he found his concern growing by the second. Alright, look. Sparing your life is based on the premise that you will live in this house under supervision, and that's only until a more permanent solution is found. Talk like normal human beings. It's a lot more amicable than just disposing of the witness, don't you think? The guy's not smart enough to... It's like she forgets how unintelligent this guy is. But yet the most understanding person in the world. At any rate, this is my way of keeping our promise, so no complaining. This cold war I'm waging with Alice is enough of a headache already. She sighed as she stared Sojiro down as he lay on the bed. But make no mistake, your status here is the lowest of the low, even lower than a dog's. Since that night, I'm the one to decide whether you live or die, which means you belong to me now. Is that clear enough for you? As Oko finished her declaration, Sojiro steadily looked up at the ceiling so she would not notice his reaction. He meant no offense to Aoko, but he had to hide the fact that he fundamentally disagreed with her analogy. In Sojiro's opinion, it was disrespectful to both dogs and humans to call him lower than a dog. A more accurate analogy of their power dynamic would be that of a rabbit and a wild boar. Hence why he chose not to voice this opinion. Smartest move you've made all game. Unlike his apartment, the ceiling here was decorated with ornate patterns. Putting aside how he would be treated here in terms of lodging, it was a definite upgrade. Maybe it would not be all that bad. Sojiro nodded slowly as to persuade himself. And for the time being, I decided to let you live. That is what she had told him not 2 days ago. While I don't really accept what you're saying, I understand my position. I remember that you promised me now. There are a lot of things I could disagree with, but I admit you did promise me at least that. Are you really serious about me living with the two of you? I know you're pretty easygoing, but that girl seems pretty against it, and I'm not exactly... At that point, he zipped his lips. Aoko's eyes were tinged with bloodlust. Oh, please excuse me. I'm sorry to hear that you're dissatisfied with the arrangement. Her contrived smile so obviously forced struck despair to Sochiro's heart. Come to think of it, he vaguely recalled her warning to him to not make her repeat herself. Furthermore, as a practical matter, Sochiro Shizuki's life was now in the hands of Aoka. It would be unwise to anger her further, he told himself as if speaking in a third person. Not at all. I mean, what choice do I have? None, Aoko said, with a firm nod of her head. Sochiro slumped his shoulders in surrender. Alright, I understand you now, Aozaki. Just let me ask you this one thing. Do I have any human rights? Poor little Shizuki. You never had any in the first place. Now, stop wasting my time with stupid questions. Sochiro reflected upon her answer, now feeling like his question was indeed stupid. Sorta is, sorta isn't. It's a question that really should be asked, but the answer is kinda obvious as well. It's one of those questions where it's like, you think you know the answer, but you want to make sure before you make any assumptions and you look like an ass. Or you end up screwing yourself and thinking you have less rights than you actually do. You should have already known the answer before he asked. Yeah. That's what I thought. I had a feeling this was going to happen even before waking up. His muttering provoked a dubious stare from Aoko before he quickly retracted it. If she questioned every little thing he said, they would be there until sundown. Well, as long as you understand. Now, we need to get down to brass tacks. Let's move to the drawing room. I have a ton of explaining to do. Can you stand on your own? I think so. Oh wait, you're talking about him? I was able to move my hands earlier, so blood is at least flowing. I should be able to walk. Thank God. I did not want to see you get carried by her. That is not an image we needed to see. Good. You'll be fine then. With that, she turned her back and walked away from him. He had seen this bold form of hers many times before. You've gotten her back just ingrained in your memory at this point from her just walking away from you. She just does not want it. Instantly, the memories flashed back to him like lightning. I remember now. This is the Aozaki I know. Without knowing it, he cracked a smile. He was so lost that he did not know his left from his right. But recalling this alone was enough to calm him. The Aoko he knew was different from the one in the House of Mirrors. She was not that brooding girl he saw there. He felt a pang of nostalgia. The Aoko he knew was brisk in movement, and unfaltering in gaze, just like this one. She was the same when he first met her, moody, yet overflowing with confidence in her element. Let's go, let's go. Chop chop! Alice is waiting for us in the drawing room. She was already outside the door, standing in the chilly corridor. You must not know what it's like to be bedridden, Aozaki. Grunting and groaning, Sochiro eventually got to his feet. His body, heavy and stiff while he was lying down, cried out in pain as he tried to stand and walk. Every step sent shooting pains through his bones. Despite this, he put on a calm face and made his way toward Aoko. Typically, he was quick to not pay any mind to life's little struggles, but these pains, he needed to force himself to consciously ignore them. In other words, he was displaying false bravado, an uncharacteristic reaction for someone who never suppressed their true feelings. Amazing. You really are tough. Thanks. It's just my heart that's fragile. Oh yeah, I'll keep that in mind and try not to hurt your precious feelings. Too late! Too late! You are about 45 minutes too late and a good month and a half too late. You hurt his feelings when he first came. He just did not realize it. And then you decked him. Let's not forget that. Trust me, You really are about really too late. Naturally, her voice was devoid of any true empathy. Sarcasm. Got it. She turned away from the once more dejected Sojiro and began walking briskly down the corridor. Oh, and... Just then she stopped, feet snapped together as though something had popped into her head. And just as if she was remembering something she had forgotten in a completely trivial way.
それじゃあ行くわよ。
Follow me, Sojiro. She gallantly turned back to the way she was heading, the words sounding so natural as she spoke them. Aoko did not see the look in Sojiro's eyes as he heard her words. For though she worked in the arcane, the spell Aoko had woven was apparent to everyone but her. She just gave him an order to follow. I don't know what spell you were talking about, because there is no romance there. After blinking his eyes as if blinded by something, Sojiro casually nodded and followed behind her. The sheer size of interior was daunting. The 3 floors of this mansion contained more rooms than Sojiro's entire apartment building. Except their size was excessive. I mean, you're not wrong. Can we address that, please? He's not wrong. The impracticality of this building is ridiculous. There is no realistic need for something like this. So far, from what I gather, this could fit 20 families in here. Everyone have their own room, including the parents, and you'd still have space. This is what we would call something you turn into an hotel. Here, the mansion's rooms seemed too numerous for so few inhabitants. Its lavish compartmented halls cold and dreary. The guest room that Sojiro had been sleeping in was on the second floor of the east wing. A staircase leading down to the first floor was at the end of the corridor and the center of the mansion. Winter sunlight beamed through the windows, which only made the empty corridor appear even lonelier. The center of the mansion was topped with a vaulted skylight overlooking the first floor. The staircase connecting first and second floors lined its walls. Another staircase on the other end of the second floor corridor presumably led to an attic or storeroom of sorts on the third floor. Paying no mind to Sojiro's gawking, Aoko descended the stairs with familiar steps. The foyer was a place of white and wood grain. Its hardwood floors shined brightly under sunlight coming in from the ceiling. And the tall white walls were spotless and brawny. There was a staircase leading to the second floor and a long unused fireplace. A neglected telephone sat on a table opposite a solemn grandfather clock. It was more like an old castle than a mansion. Aoko shot Sojiro a callous stare, who stood captivated by the otherworldly scenery. Otherworldly? Otherworldly, it doesn't even describe this. This is not a life most people experience. This is the life no human being should experience. Hey, snap out of it. The drawing room is this way. She grabbed the knob on the door next to the stairs. There were 4 doors to the foyer, and the easternmost as you entered the house led to the drawing room. The door on the opposite side of the foyer to the mansion led mansion's west wing. To the south was the entrance. So we just got the whole layout. We're just giving the whole layout. Eastern. Got one to the east, that's the drawing room. One to the south, entrance. Foyer to the west. And to the north, one more door next to the fireplace. Where does that lead? Tucked absolutely God knows where. Tucked underneath the stairs, this door connected to a bathroom unbeknownst to Sojiro. So is the toilet. Of all the rooms, they chose a toilet there. Probably the most practical room yet. Due to the lack of windows, the first floor corridors were not well lit. If the second floor was a seldom attended infirmary, and the foyer a stairwell in some foreign castles. And the first floor corridor was a windowless labyrinth, not unlike the corridors of a hotel. Which this building should be at this point. Why anyone owns this and not using it as a hotel is beyond me. Although it has not been long since Sojiro came to the city, even he could feel this place was out of the ordinary. I'm not making comments on that. I'm not. That one speaks for itself. Seeing as how he's going to be stuck here for the foreseeable future, he found it hard to get excited about living in a haunted house. Dude, this is the best opportunity. You should be ecstatic. I would love to spend some time in a haunted house. Just a good month. Bring it on. I won't mess with Ouija boards, but haunted houses, let's do it. So, that's the drawing room, and a little farther down is the kitchen. It's fine for cooking simple meals. Here, next to the drawing room, is a sunroom, which we use as a dining room. But we'll get to that later. $50 says the kitchen is beyond just cooking simple meals. I guarantee you, it's like an entire restaurant kitchen plus. Like, you have everything you could need. You could just open an entire restaurant kitchen in there, serve every single room, and cook everything at once. It's got like 800 stoves, 15 ovens, an island, a little bar area where you can make salads. It would make any restaurant here in town jealous about the size of the kitchen. And their line, massive. You can fit 15 bodies on there and still have elbow room. I get happy when I just have butt space on my line. I am so used to my butt hitting somebody on the line, it's not even funny. Aoko reaching for a door along the dim corridor. However, she paused before turning the knob. She flashed Sojiro a meaningful glance, which she quickly withdrew. Then, without further ado, she opened the door. Open sesame! Sorry for the wait. He's on board, she said to Alice as she entered the drawing room. After hesitating for a moment, Sojiro entered after her. Compared to the corridor, the drawing room was unexpectedly modern. Yeah, considering it's got the TV that if you drop it from 15 stories up, it still survives. God, I miss those TVs. You could drop that from the Empire State Building and the concrete would break. Not the TV, though. You just plug it back in and it's like, alright, good to go. But it takes 18 people to carry it, because it weighs as much as a human being. Is that a VHS player? That's a VHS player, too! The carpeted floor, leathered sofas, and a large 30-inch television were more what Sojiro had come to expect from a normal home. 30 inches! That's the size of my TV. That is still lavish in this time frame. If you got that telephone that we saw in the first chapter, 30 inches is lavish. That is not modern. That is 2020. That is 2015. Hell, that is small. In this family-oriented room, a girl far removed from said setting sat quietly on the sofa. Aoko sat on the sofa across from the girl in all black. This gave Sojiro two seating options. Next to Aoko Aozaki, or next to Alice Konji. There is a third! There is a third! And it's probably the best option. The floor! I'd be sitting on the floor. It's like, I'm not sitting with either of these two girls yet. Both wanted me dead just less than 72 hours ago. And 48 of those hours, I was asleep. I'm taking the floor. After about 2 seconds of deliberation, he decided to stand by the wall as neither option appealed. There is a fourth! There is a fourth! And somehow that floor still sounds better. Mainly because the standing sounds very uncomfortable for, like, how long this conversation is probably going to last. He can sit back down. Aoko and Alice were facing each other across from a coffee table. The clean, perfectly level table somehow added to the austere... some French word atmosphere. And since he agreed, you shouldn't have any objections, right, Alice? Alice gave one deep nod in response to her non-question. From his position against the wall, they looked as though they were clearing up some... I'm not even going to try to say that. I don't even know where to start. Sojiro got the feeling that the two did not entirely see eye to eye concerning what to do with him. Whatever gave you that idea? Was it the fact that one had a dagger and the other came busting in to save your butt for the second time? Or is it clicking just now? I suppose not, but we still need to investigate the cause. How about whatever you were talking to him about for just a moment? She cast a sideways look at Sojiro with those darkly shaded eyes of hers. Her voice shared the same cold indifference, making it abundantly clear that she had no intentions of accepting him as a housemate. Good, because he doesn't want to be here either. At least two people are on the same page. I'm pretty sure even the third is like, I don't want to do this, but there feels like no other option. Outside of talking. And you're fine with this? No! But I don't really get a choice. It's death or this. And I like living. I do hope you haven't forgotten about what happened at the amusement park. If he says yes, I'm going to be very concerned. Alice's voice was a mixture of judgment and scrutiny. She was aware that from an outsider's perspective, she and Aoko appeared dangerous, and she wanted to know if Sojiro was up to the challenge of living with such people. I wish it had all been a bad dream, but I remember it perfectly. It's kind of hard to forget. It's ingrained in my memory. I am traumatized by what I just witnessed. Above all else, it was the only way they would let him live. Alice responded apathetically to a non-committal murmur. She silently placed a small object on the table with a clink. Clink! She pulled her pale fingers away from a small glass bottle. The glass, more pale blue than transparent, was enough to signify its high quality. With a crane-like motion, she removed the stopper. Even though this was the first time she had seen such a thing, something about it made him uneasy. We're about to do shots of memory-wiping potions. Wait, that probably would have been their first option, rather than kill him, if that was an option. Was it that it made him sad? Or Aoko's standoffish behavior only added to his concern? Alice once again fixed her eyes on Sojiro, who was bracing himself for the worst. The glint in her eyes was bewitching. There was not a single emotion apparent on her face. She called his name.
Shizuki-kun?
Shizuki? Pretty. Yeah. The moment he responded to her whisper call, his surroundings began to transform. The air grew thick, so thick it took on color and shape. Oh great, we're high. We're out here doing lines of drugs or something. Well, it is the 80s. The density and discomfort that coiled around his skin made it seem like air had become words. Opening his mouth to gasp for air, the words invaded his lungs. Instinctively, he covered his mouth with his right hand and clutched his chest with his left, both hands appearing clear as mud. Even the thickest of mountain fogs never seized his senses like this. If he had to come up with an analogy, no words could quite describe it, but it was like he was standing in the pages of a newspaper. It's called acid. It was very popular in the 60s. And apparently this is some really special stuff. The first sense to adjust to this new sensation was his hearing. Then his breathing stabilized, yet the feeling of suffocation remained. There was nothing restraining him that he could see, but he felt an intense claustrophobia. Oh, so it's a bad trip. Got it. Before he even felt shock as the sudden change, he reached out in an attempt to find an escape, but his only outstretched hand found only emptiness. It seemed contradictory that a place with no walls and a wide view could feel so cramped, spirited away in a dense fog. Back in the mountains, such superstitions never seemed real to him until now. And then he finally noticed a surprise to beat all surprises. The drawing room had not changed into another world at all. He knew this from certain because he could still see the room he was just in through the fog, as well as the two girls, Aoko Aozaki and Alice Kuonji, watching him closely. It was simply a problem of perspective. The floor was dark and perfectly flat. Looking up, there were two of them stood. The two girls were like two impossibly gargantuan clouds, coldly looking down at him. Remembering the structure of the room and layout of the furniture, Sojiro's unsurpassed candor finally grasped his predicament. The parade at the amusement park had nothing on this. Somehow, he was inside the glass bottle that Alice Kuonji produced only moments ago. We're doing this again! We're in a bottle! Great! This is the second time they put us in a bottle. That was unexpected. Marveling at Alice's wickedness, Aoko glanced at the small bottle on the table. It's the same as 2 nights ago, only this time he's awake. I'm so glad I'm not the only one who caught that. Aoko calmly mused. Alice, however, was not looking down at the bottle. Instead, her eyes were locked on Aoko. I'm surprised. I thought you would be upset. Not really. I thought about doing something similar. He needed to be taught a little lesson about magecraft anyways. I think he got that lesson at the amusement park. I think he has full understanding of just how bad his life is in danger right now. So, I think he's got it. You're saving me trouble. To tell the truth, I'm not even mad. For once, these girls are on the same page! No, this is pretty hardcore even for me. Says the girl who tried to kill him like 2 nights ago. Aoko did not take her eyes off the bottle as she spoke. Although she did her best to feign indifference towards Alice's magecraft, she could not completely hide her curiosity. The figure inside the bottle likely having caught on to what was happening. He tried various things like flailing its arms and sprinting around. The surface of the bottle was cloudy, so it was hard to make out exactly what was happening inside. By the way, this looks totally different from the one you gave me. The one you took, this one, took more time to create. The one I gave you was disposable, and only made to isolate the subject. This one allows for two-way communication. Really? He doesn't seem to be replying, though. You just can't hear him. Alice said calmly, finally dropping her gaze to the bottle. Just then the figure inside stopped moving. It appeared only Alice had connection to the world inside of the bottle. Lame. Only the caster gets to have fun. What is this girl's thought process? What is your thought process? Aoko sighed, losing interest. Ignoring Aoko, Alice opened her mouth as if to speak to someone not altogether there. She's not all together there. For one, she's not all together there. Girl's over here going, I want to have some fun.
どう
How
こ
about
れでも
now?
一番無難だと思う
Still think this is the safest option? The person she was talking to was none other than the one inside the bottle. Your choice is this or death. She was of course referring to Sojiro's earlier comment. It was her way of testing the boy who implied that living in this mansion was seemed safe. I don't think he meant that in that sense.
いきなり小瓶に閉じ込めて聞き返すあたり容赦ない
Suddenly
というか
entrapping him in the bottle and
こ
interrogating
の子の
him
洋
was
館
pretty
への執着
ruthless.
の問題よね
But even more worrisome is her attachment to this mansion. Then again, considering alcohol had invited this witness to a house of mirrors for a fight to the death, she was in no position to criticize. You... I can't tell what goes on in these people's heads like half the time. It's like this writer just like, we're gonna just state what the audience is thinking sometimes, and other times we're just gonna make them say it out loud. And you don't know which one you're gonna get until it's too late. She would make sure Alice did not let her emotions get the best of her. But for now, she was content to observe as a bystander. After a moment, Alice's expression changed. Girl looks genuinely surprised, like, yes, this is still better than dying. She must have gotten an answer to her question. Without any way to tell what the situation was inside the bottle, Aoko had no idea what the answer was, however. Only that Alice's face was the one she had made when the boy she was talking to said what she wanted to hear.
私が言えることでもない
I suppose I'm not one to talk, but... For an instant she glanced at Aoko. Slightly shaking her head, she reached for the small bottle.
本当物好きねしずき
This
君
Shizuki is quite the strange one. What was your first clue? Was it the fact he saw y'all? The fact that he managed to survive getting killed by Aoko? The fact that he killed a puppet? Or this? Or how about the fact that he figured out which one was Snark? There is a long list of reasons why this dude is strange. She said his name with what seemed like a forlorn frown. As soon as she removed the stopper, the air in the room quivered. The boy who had been casting a shadow on the wall until a minute ago now leaned against it for support again. Aoko turned around to face Sojiro right behind her, resting her elbow over the back of the
ど
sofa.
う気分は
How do you feel?
見ての通りめちゃくちゃだ
What does it look like? Messed up. That is the first time he looks genuinely mad at somebody. And he has reason to be. Because her expression is like, yeah, and what of it? Sojiro answered with unusual hostility. Aoko was reminded of the strange behavior as she was sure that he would be scared or shocked, not angry.
夢で似たような
I'd be mad too if you locked me in a bottle!
心臓が止まってたところだ
If I hadn't already seen something similar in a dream, my heart probably would have stopped. I'm lucky it
信
didn't.
じられないのは
What I can't believe is why you felt the need to use magecraft on
魔
me.
術は怖いもの
You
なん
could
だ
have
って
just
言え
said
ば済
it
むだ
was
ろうに
scary and left it at that.
それと物騒な青たちの声
Plus,
聞こえてたぞ
I could hear the threatening things you said, Awazaki. Okay. To your point, there's a difference between saying it and showing it. No one here seems to grasp the idea that I think he's got the idea of how dangerous it is considering what he just dealt with. And then to top it off, he seems to think that these people don't have the common sense to understand, like, hey, saying this stuff is something you don't want to mess around with, rather than showing it, is a good idea. It makes common sense. Like, no. No one here is thinking in their right mind. And it's wonderful. My sincerest apologies, but it is true that I wanted you to feel it for yourself. At least now you'll take Magecraft seriously, won't you, Sochiro? He was taking it seriously when you tried to kill him! As much as he hated to admit it, she was right. Though, it was not that he had taken Magecraft lightly, but merely that he couldn't understand it. And you understand it now? Because I still don't. Come on. I still don't really get it, though, even after that experience. Compared to that crazy stuff I've seen you do, Aozaki, whatever the heck just happened to me was hardly unbelievable. Honestly, this felt like something just a basic person could do. I'm gonna stick you in a bottle. Versus, hey, I'm gonna blast you with bullets! Of course not. Alice and I are totally different. I already told you, even in our world, her Magecraft is considered over the top and unspeakably horrible. No! You don't say! How rude. When it comes to which of us is more of a threat to human life, I think you're far more dangerous than me. And that's beside the point. I'm starting to harbor doubts about you even wanting to kill him in the first place. No, in the first place, I'm pretty sure she did. It was after he saved her life that she was willing to look a different way. You must have been pretty soft on him for him to say he believes that he's safe here. Well, of course I wanted to kill him. I don't know what he's told you, but you've got it all twisted. This guy doesn't realize he's in danger until he gets burned. I mean, sometimes you gotta tell a kid, don't put a fork in the electrical outlet before they get... And they don't realize it until they get that shock, and it's like, oh, hello, yeah, that actually hurts. Don't touch the burner. Touches the burner. Oh! Maybe I should learn not to touch the burner. And even then, he'd probably think, well, at least I'm still alive, and whistle all the way home. Isn't that right, Sojiro? She's got a point. She's got a point. Why are none of these people right, but none of these people are wrong? He had no idea why she's suddenly shouting, but he nodded anyway just to be safe. The drawing room had become awfully noisy. Alice sat watching the two at a complete loss. And so, Sojiro accepted his supervised life in the mansion, and that he would be living under the same room as Under the same roof as two professional mages. Having experienced firsthand how dangerous that life could get, he was finally at peace with the situation. Maybe you should take some time to learn how to do it yourself. Can he learn? If that's how it's going to be, then, oh well. Even if he did not seem like it, he had thought it through in his own way and come to a clear resolution. Okay, down to business. So, I know we've said that you'd be under supervision, but we haven't really talked about how we'll be doing that, or the Magecraft that is responsible for enforcing it. We start with a brief explanation. Perhaps he was brought up to listen closely to lectures about new information because Sojiro suddenly looked attentive. Alice, on the other hand, kept her mouth shut in silent defiance. First off, the time you will be made to live here has been
要はその期限
predetermined.
まで
In short,
誰に
until
も
the end
私
of
た
that
ちのことを
period,
喋ら
if you
ず
don't tell anyone about us or die
勝
for
手に
some
死なな
reason,
ければ
you're
晴れ
free
て
to
自
go.
由の身ってことね。そうよねアリス。
Good so far, Alice?
そうね。
Indeed.
私たちを怒
Provided
ら
he
せなけ
refrains
れ
from
ば
angering us, that is,
そういう可能
he
性
has a
は
chance of survival. Not saying anything. Not saying anything. I'm not saying anything. Nope.
よし、いきなり話が食い違ってる。
Yep, this is already off on the wrong foot. Sojito's head dropped like he knew what was coming.
ちょっと黙っててアリス。
That is enough,
あ
Alice.
とあんたも黙ってろ。
And you, shut up. She's got at the two of them already at our wits' end.
話を続けるけど
Point proven. As I was
秘
saying,
密保持のためにあんたを
having you
住まわ
live
せる
with
ため
us
に
for the sake of
二次災害ど
confidentiality
うして
means
も避
other
ければ
problems are
同
bound
じ
to
家
come
に
up.
いる以上
You'll likely
余
be
計に
exposed
秘
to
密を
even
見
more
せ
of
る
our
ことになる
secrets.
からね。
That's what has Alice
アリ
so
スは
bent
そ
out
れ
of
が
shape.
嫌なんだろうけど
Now that Aoko mentioned it, Sojiro could see her point. With their target of observation under house arrest, the disclosure of more confidential information was inevitable. Yeah, she's not wrong! She's really not.
ちょっと待ってくれ。
Dude can literally grab a book and go, let's see how to do magecraft. Hold on a second, doesn't that make me being here a little
大丈
counterproductive?
夫問題ないわ
It's not a problem. In the end, we'll just
最
have
後
you
には
forget
ここで
everything
暮らし
about
た
us.
記憶ごと
About living
私
here
た
at
ちの
all.
ことを忘れ
Why don't you just do that in the first place? Just do that in the first place. Wipe his memory. Oh, God. No blood on your hands. That should have been plan A through D.
大丈夫問題ないわだ
忘れてもらう。
Have me forget.
公園での一
Right.
件から
From the incident of the park onward, you'll forget
ルーンってい
everything.
う魔術系統
There's
が
a
あ
kind
る
of
んだよね
magecraft called runes that
その
has
中
the
でサク
power
ッ
to
と
make
記憶
one
を忘
forget
れさせるも
memories.
のがあるのよ
That should have been your plan in the first place.
人道的であるのは変わらないけどま命を消す代わりに記憶を消すってこと
It's a bit inhumane, but erasing memories seems a bit better than, well, erasing your life. Why is this just now coming up?
青崎、それは
Do I get a say in?
悪いけど反論は却下
Sorry, but no objections.
肝心の忘却の
Anyway,
ルー
an
ンに
amnesia rune is outside of our field of expertise, so it's going to take some time for us to find the rune and learn everything about it. Okay, never mind. That explains it. That still should have been plan A. That still should have been plan A. How do we make an amnesia rune?
つまりそれが監視の期限ってわけ
In other words, that's when
私
you
た
get
ち
to
が
leave.
忘却のルーンを見
Until we
つける
find
ま
this
で
rune, we're using your life as collateral, so you keep your mouth shut. Why was this not plan A? This was plan C! This was plan C!
アリスはそんなややこしいことはせずに五感全部壊してしまおうなんて言ってるけど
Alice's idea is that we destroy your five senses and be done with you to avoid the extra effort. That sounds like an excellent plan C. What plan B was, I don't know yet. But the fact that death was the first plan... There's not words to describe that.
しずきくんリビングスタチューとか嫌でしょ
So, Shizuki, what do you say? Fancy becoming a living statue? Sojiro only understood about 80% of what Aoko had explained, and the last part about a living statue had gone straight over his head. Medusa! He had tried his best to visualize what Aoko was going on about, but the only thing he could conjure in his mind was an image of the mascot creature Kitsy.
それは
Yeah, I'd rather not.
確かに嫌だな。
Aoko agreed with a bewildered Sojiro, neither one the wiser to the other's misinterpretation.
とにかく遅くても1ヶ月で忘却のルーンは見つけ出せるだろうし
Anyway, at most, it will probably take about a month to find this amnesia rune, and another 2 to put it to use. Until then, that means you'll be living with us. However, we can't just let you wander around without a clue what's going on. That's a surefire way to get yourself killed. I doubt you would be comfortable being left in the dark about us either, so starting now, I'm going to fill you in on what it's like to be a modern magician. At the very least, I'll hopefully prevent any more misunderstandings. Not that she thought this country, a bumpkin, had any idea of old or new anyway. The thought brought a smug grin to her lips. Let's leave a tour of the mansion for later, and start with who and what mages are. And don't worry, you don't need to understand everything right away. You're an outsider after all, so just bite off only what you can chew. Sojiro nodded obediently to Aoka's professorial instructions. This was Aoka's way of telling him not to ask questions when he did not understand something. She just wanted to not waste time answering questions. At this point, she's done with his questions. And though Sojiro had taken issue with her statement, he meekly obeyed, knowing better than to object now. Aoko nodded approvingly at his attentiveness and started her lecture. Her long lecture. Let's start with magicians, basically. Since it doesn't concern you, I'll skip to the part of how magecraft and magic are not the same. All you need to remember is that they are 2 different things. Mages are an absolute rule, must operate in secrecy. Naturally, mages will find out about other mages, so it's only a crime if an outsider like you finds out about one of us. A crime punishable by death, I should add. Not by other mages, though. By humans. Especially the Christians. The reason being that the more magecraft is exposed, the weaker it becomes. So you finally provide me with an answer of why you don't just explain, hey, could you please keep this silent? Got it. You'll often hear us say mystic or mystery, which comes from a Greek word that means to shut the mouth. It follows that magecraft would cease to be if its secrets were revealed. Civilization has always treated the unexplored and the unknown as things to be feared because of their mysterious nature. But we don't hide ourselves because we fear persecution if we're discovered. What we fear is the loss of the unknown itself. When our arts are revealed, they become weaker, so by protecting our secrecy, we're also protecting our own future. I'm not clear on how magecraft works yet, but I think what you're saying is that if you don't keep it a secret, it gets weaker. So then, does that mean you got weaker now that I saw you, Aozaki? No, not particularly. Let me explain in a little more detail. When I say it loses power, I mean magecraft as a whole will get weaker in the future. I'm not talking about individuals. The unwritten law that thou shalt conceal thyself was an adage from a bygone age, but at some point it became a law of the highest order. It's like laws in a civilized society. We like to think that it's human nature to punish crime and immorality, but ultimately a structural solution is needed to maintain order. If crimes were left unpunished, the society which we strive so hard to build would collapse. What we may just consider to be crime is dissemination and vulgarization of the mystic. Merely immoral things like murder, well, those are a matter of perspective. They generally aren't considered outright crimes. Wow. Wow. Okay. Wow. Your priorities. The good-for-nothing bunch responsible for imposing the law is a group called the Mages Association. Think of them as a labor union. The phrase, make eternal the mysticism of magecraft is nothing more than a rule they created to perpetuate magecraft itself. Nevertheless, the rule is absolute. Those who violate it cease to exist in a magical world. Or rather, it would be difficult for them to go on living at all. For us, that's our... Well, our life as mages, I guess. In order to protect it, we had no choice but to erase you, the witness, to our magecraft. Don't give me those puppy dog eyes. Just because you know a little about our lives doesn't mean we're not fessing up to what happened at the amusement park. It was our decision to try and kill you. It wasn't anyone else's fault. So, if you're gonna blame anyone, blame me. Okay, back to the topic. In the past, mages were recognized in society enough for it to be considered an occupation, but they took their own magecraft with them to their graves. I don't know what led to things getting so twisted, but even the profession itself has to be kept secret these days. So what happens if they just marry a muggle? That's what I want to know. Do you teach the muggle magecraft? Do you explain, hey, I'm a witch? Like, what happens when you Harry Potter this bitch? Or are we... If they didn't go that far, the association feared that in the distant future, magecraft would be used up and the association would fall apart. So, do we Lord Voldemort this bitch, or do we Harry Potter this bitch? We had reached a point where everything became explainable through human knowledge, from the building blocks of nature to the fabric of the cosmos, once considered to be the realm of the gods. Maybe the founders believed that magecraft would become the last bastion for the unknown. For mystics, that which is beyond human reach. Or maybe they thought that in the long run, magecraft would eventually become meaningless. Whatever the reason, mages hid their identities and passed on their individual rituals in secret. And since they couldn't pass it on to outsiders, it was only natural that they taught it to their descendants. So someone learning magecraft weakens it if they're from the outside. Alice and I are both products of generations of lineage. The Mages Association I mentioned earlier is a vast organization that governs those magecraft wielders still dedicated to their field. Mages think of them as their ruling body. The association is actually made up of a bunch of factions, and the vast majority of mages are affiliated with the London chapter. The law to conceal ourselves was one of their three main principles. Okay, we're getting exposition dump. Got it. Buckle up. This is going to be some long exposition. I don't even know where to begin. Rename the chapter Exposition. If a mage reveals their secret to a civilian, the association is quick to make an example of them. But even if the mage doesn't get punished, the witness should still be eliminated to protect the mage and their families of magecraft. And that was the end of the first part of the lecture. Aoko paused for a moment. Sojiro was doing his best to process the information. Ready to move on? Sure, but let me see if I understand so far. Mages used to hide their identities not for their own sake, but for the sake of magecraft. Now they're more concerned with hiding themselves. And if you break the rules, you'll be punished by a place called the Association. Does that mean you two are members of the Association? No, we're freelance, though we walk in similar circles. They're simply the largest organized group. Even though no one asked them to, they've taken it upon themselves to police the world of magecraft. So America. The association is basically just America making rules for everybody else to follow, and when they don't like it, you get a revolution. Just yoink your president and take him for crimes. And oh hey, you have oil. What a coincidence. So, no matter how unaffiliated we are as mages, if we break the rules, we'll get punished anyways. The association still has more power than the UN. Okay, I got the gist of it. It's alright. Just focus on these parts important to you. Next is Magecraft, though I've barely learned enough to talk about it myself. Sorry. Forget I said that. I touched on this already, but these days Magecraft is losing its meaning. If you created a fire a long time ago, when there were no lighters, that was enough to count as a mystic feat. And nowadays, life is awfully convenient, right? You of all people can appreciate that. Sojiro nodded with a glum look on his face. He had been made painfully aware of such conveniences. Difficult tasks that would occupy an entire day of work in the mountains could be performed easily here. For him, having been brought up in the mountains without electricity or running water, city life was by definition magic. He only wished it would not be such a back-breaking work to adapt to said conveniences. I do think that creating fire without tools should be a good God's job, though. Even though we've worked out how to do it more efficiently with a flamethrower? Sojiro wasn't sure how to answer Aoko. It would have been easy for him to ask Aoko how much accumulated effort she thought it had taken humans to imitate those gods, but he knew it would come across as an insult. From what I just saw, I was under the impression that Magecraft could do anything, but maybe I misunderstood. He glanced at the glass bottle on the table. Mentally, he sighed in relief. He still had not come to terms with the fact that he had been trapped inside that tiny thing. However, that's a misunderstanding, alright. If Magecraft wasn't all powerful, why would anyone bother to learn it? Aoko puffed out her chest as she chided him. It might take some doing, but there's nothing Magecraft can't do. Granted, some users are able to trick you into thinking something's possible when it really isn't. But since we were born into this world, there's nothing that we can't do within its limits. Besides true magic, of course. But we'll get into that some other time. What I'm trying to say is that Magecraft doesn't create miracles. It's only the process that's miraculous. To produce a real miracle, you need true magic. A great mage is someone who can fly a passenger jet with only their Magecraft. Meanwhile, a magician deals in making the impossible possible. There's no end to the exposition, is there? Which is why we might just turn out to be the last magicians. Focus, Aoko. Alice had been quietly listening until she muttered her rebuke, as if Aoko had crossed a line. He doesn't need to know that. Shouldn't we be educating Shizuki on the dangers of living with us? Sorry, you're right. Slip of the tongue. Anyway, Mage is spending every waking moment experimenting in Magecraft and would become devils in a heartbeat in order to protect their Magecraft, by which I mean their family secrets. Their lairs, which we call workshops, are like fortresses packed with all kinds of magical mechanisms. Like traps that kill intruders before they even know what hit them. It's all to protect our secrets. This mansion is no different. If you wind up trapped like you were before because you wandered around carelessly, even I won't be able to help you, so be careful of the dark. You might even find yourself stuck inside a mirror. Seriously, that could actually happen. So that's why they haven't just sold this place off. They don't trust muggles around people, around this equipment. Sojiro so hoped they would provide him with a general idea of what to watch out for, but he passed, knowing that he was unlikely to get a straight answer. Oh god, no, you are getting no straight answer out of these girls. That was a lot to take in on one go, but my point is, keep your nose out of where it doesn't belong. Even though we're going to erase your memory in the end, there's still things that we'd have to kill you for seeing. Got it. The mansion has rules I have to follow. I understand. Is there anything else I should? I mean, you're at someone's house. Duh, of course there's rules. His eyes wandered as he trailed off mid-sentence, pondering. He understood that the mansion was more dangerous than outside, and that Magecraft needed to stay secret. But the explanation seemed to contradict his current problem. For starters, how had he managed to witness something that they took such pains to keep hidden? I'm sorry, it just occurred to me. Mages are all united under the organization called the Association, right? If that's the case, why were you attacked by that puppet, Aozaki? If its master was a mage, wouldn't that mean you were fighting an ally? Am I missing something here? I was saving that for the last part. Normally, this would be the point in the story where you'd say, I made it all up and laugh it off. Even if you're experienced it, the existence of Magecraft shouldn't be something you accept so easily. He is one of the most open-minded people in this entire story is the thing, though. Dude's over here like, I literally saw a puppet try to kill you. Witchcraft? Makes sense. Seriously, if that happened to me and you were like, yeah, I'm a witch, and here are some rules about it, I'd be like, well? I mean, outside of, I need some church today. Got it. I'll keep my mouth shut. Got it. Especially if you told me, hey, this needs to be kept a secret. Aoko scratched her head as though troubled by how Sojiro could take every word at face value. It's kinda hard when you're staring death in the face by a puppet with no remote control. And it just over here like zap, and you just watch bullets fly out of a girl's arm, just like pew 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 pew. This is why they have obliviators in Harry Potter. It's kind of hard not to look at it and go, magic. That is the thing. Got it. Across from her, Alice's face betrayed no expression, but she shared the same opinion. Is that so weird? It's mega weird. In fact, you've been weird from the get-go. A normal person would be shocked, scared, unwilling to accept our existence. Why do you, of all people, believe me when I say I'm a magician? I watched you try to kill me. With magic. In retrospect, the question should have been posed at the House of Mirrors. Back then, though, Sojiro was surprised by seeing the phenomenon of magecraft for the first time. He showed no surprise or discomfort towards Aoko, the mage wielding it. Feeling the probing stares of the two girls, the two mages, made Sojiro feel uneasy. From where he was standing, his suspicion was suspicious in and of itself. Dude thought this was a Tuesday in the city. It's not a hard concept to understand. There's no reason at all, really. Up in the mountains, people just accept things as they are. We don't deny something we see in front of us, just because we don't have the knowledge to explain it. Man, if only people in modern day could grasp that concept. We can't explain it. It doesn't make sense. It violates our lives. It doesn't exist. You're a horrible person. You are of the devil. Okay! This dude somehow is the... You know this is fiction when the country boy is like, yeah, this makes sense. I just witnessed it. You said it yourself. Lighters and magic might as well be the same thing, right? Thought they weren't really the same to him anymore, he added quietly before shutting up. What he said about those innocent days in the mountains had come from the heart. And the words resonated with not only Aoko Aozaki, but also Alice Koonji. It was something everyone should have principles to stand by. Being open-minded. Man! Being willing to listen and go, well, just watched you perform magic. You're saying you're a magician. I can't really explain it with my logic, so I have your word to go on. Indeed, to this boy, those words were an unshakable truth.
あるものはあるか
Some things are the way they are. I see what you're saying. She was impressed, if only slightly. If this boy, no matter how much of an outlier he was, could accept the things around him, he would be able to get through this just
そう
fine.
ね宗十郎はそうなのよね
That's a good way to explain
簡
it,
単に信
Sojiro.
じてもらえることが
I
信
guess
じ
the
られない
fault's with us for not believing you sincerely.
私たちの方がどうかして
Much
た
like when
ら
Aoko met Sojiro for the first time. In that classroom on the first day, Sojiro took everything that was happening in his stride. The memory brought a bitter smile to Aoko's face.
Ja, 気を取り直して
Alright, let's get back
宗
on
十
track.
郎の疑問だけどね
To your earlier question, from
魔術師
various
もいろいろあっ
reasons,
て
there are
教
mages
会
that
に
don't
属していない
belong
連
to the
中もいる
association
こ
at
うい
all.
った連中は教会の目を盗んで
They
やりたい
do
放
as they
題で
please behind the
利
association's
益
back
目
and
的で
fight
他
other
の魔
mages
術
for
師
their
に
personal
喧嘩を
gain.
売ってくる
A puppet's master is
あの
one
人
of
形
those
の持ち
types.
主もそんな連中にとって私たちは
To
都合
those
のいい
jerkwads, we're
格好の
convenient,
カモなのよ
easy
私たちは
targets.
教会と共闘
But
関係に
just
あるだけで
because we have an arrangement with the association doesn't mean we're one
私
of
たち
them.
が殺されたところで
It's not like they'll come to save the day if we're at risk of being killed.
でも
But
魔術
aren't
師は
mages
魔術
forbidden
を
from
使う
using
のを
magecraft?
禁じて
それが公にならない
As
の
long as it's not in public, the
教会は目を
association
つむる
turns a blind eye. That is the biggest statement that makes the most. That's the one statement that's made the most sense the entire time. Oh, public didn't see it. Neither did we.
むしろバレなければ魔
Heck,
術
they
師同士の
practically
争いを
encourage
奨
fights
励して
between
いるのよ
mages as long as it's kept secret. Like if we don't use it, we'll get rusty or something. This is the one time it's made something's actually been like, oh, yeah, somebody has common sense.
私たちが襲われているのは
Anyway,
そ
the
れとは
attacks
別
on
の
us
話
are
で
a different story, and have to do with the fact that we own land. So it has to do with the house.
土地って
By
この
land, you mean this house?
まさか
Oh,
この
please.
岬市
Just
一
this
帯の
house?
管理地の権利を持ってるの
Oh,
よ
please. Just this house? Alice and I will hold the rights to the entirety of Misaki City. We're administrators of the whole region. Okay, then.
管理地ってつまり土地の
Administrators?
利権
You own all the land of Misaki? Dazzled, Sojiro looked away. He was sure he could see a halo of light around Aoko. He had only been renting an apartment for 2 weeks, but he was already aware of how magnificent the prospect of owning land in the city might be.
おお
Your... The word Sojiro was trying to articulate was rich. He shook all over with an emotion he did not fully grasp.
悪いけどそういうんじゃないから
Hold it. You're thinking about it. Hold it. You're thinking
私
about
た
it
ちで
wrong.
土地って言ったら
When we say land, we're
魔術師
talking
とし
about
て
the
の霊
ownership
地
and
の
control
所
of
有
spiritual grounds as
う
mages.
ちはマイナーだけど古くからこの辺りに根を下ろしてた魔術師で三崎町もう
The
ちの管
Awazaki
理下って
family
わ
might
け
be a minor player, but we've got old roots here as mages, which is why Misaki falls under our jurisdiction.
管理地っていうのはね
When I say we administer the land, we're talking about a place where spiritual power is distorted and gathers
そうい
easily.
う土地は昔か
This
ら
type
貴
of
重で
land
魔術の
has
実
always
践
been valuable,
実験には
and it's
不可欠な
vital
の
to the experimentation and
成
practice
功
of
への絶対
magecraft.
条件は
After all, the
優れ
three
た霊地
pillars of what makes us successful mages are a
大きな
strong
弟子たち
workshop,
ってね
lots of disciples, and fertile spiritual grounds. You have a disciple right there. That easily is freaking Plan B.
魔術師たちにとって
To us
土地
owning
に
administered
館付きの
land,
住み家
to
を持
us
つのは
owning administered land, and residents live in are number one on the priority list. Sojiro let her continue while wondering exactly who these two girls were to have achieved both ambitions already. Family money.
でも
However, more sacred grounds have already been claimed by the association. There's nothing left for anyone else. Rogue and landless mages have no choice but to borrow land from the organization in exchange for a monthly donation. They're basically worker bees, slaving away for the top dogs of the association. But this land here, it's been in my family for hundreds of years, so the association can't get their grubby hands on it. Why does this entirely just sum up America today? Just every bit of this? Every single word that's coming out of her mouth right now to describe magic feels like it sums up America. Do you understand what I'm saying, Sojiro? To rogue mages, our land is the juiciest fruit there is. Sojiro nodded to himself, unsure whether to call the conversation mundane or outright disturbing. Why not both? ¿Por qué no los dos? I get it. So you're basically fighting over the land. Pretty much. But because the administered land of Misaki is so minor, its challengers have all been third-rate. The enemy this time is probably some small fry thinking this place was low-hanging fruit. So for now, we're on a ceasefire because of your intrusion. That's enough about administered land, Aoko. I have to use the restroom again. I'll be back. Shizuki seems to understand the point that there are other mages out there apart from us. If any danger exists, it's more likely to arise as a result of him becoming involved in one of our battles. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Besides, this guy has zero traces of magical energy, so there's no chances of him being sensed. Plus, he has less tactical value than a watchdog, so he shouldn't be a target anyways. We just have to make sure he doesn't escape before we can find the amnesia rune. Alice silently stared her partner down. Their ideas of involving Sojiro differed greatly in both gravity and risk. Yeah, it means holding him hostage. Though, I'm pretty sure they'd both just be like, you know what, just let him die. Aoko's lack of experience had led her to believe that Sojiro would not get directly involved in any finding. It was an honest and rational thought. Aoko despised wasted action, so it was natural for her to expect the same frugality from her enemies. However, there were those in this world who could not tell right from wrong until it was too late. No one knows what the future will bring. I only hope when the time comes, we won't regret this. With a gloomy sigh, Alice came to her feet. I'm not done with this lecture yet. Don't you think that was entirely for Shizuki's benefit to you? Your opinion matters the most, and we still haven't heard it yet. If you must stick to your plan, that's fine. I'll stick to mine. Alice glided soundlessly to the door. As the girl in black opened it, she paused, barely lit by the dim corridor. Then, without warning, the rhythm of her footsteps, the small glass bottle floated into the air and shattered without mercy. That is what I should have done earlier. Her sharp tone made Sojiro's face go pale. Alice's voice was so quiet it was hard to tell if she was being serious or mocking him. I forgot to mention something. She icily eyed them before turning away. This girl is growing more and more terrifying, and I love it. And in a voice even colder than her gaze stated, I'm still not happy with this arrangement. Her frigid departure seemed to forebode the many difficulties that lay ahead. This still feels like it should have been plan A. I don't understand why anyone's unhappy by this. This should have been A. There were so many better options listed there than death. She is such a sore loser. Alko leaned back on the sofa while hurling abusive epithets. Her face looked even more irritated than usual. She says letting you go and letting you stay here are out of the question, but I don't see her coming up with any bright ideas. She's as stubborn as a mule. I wouldn't put it past her to resort to violence to get her way. Sojiro threw a wary glance at Aoko while she grumbled. He wondered what Alice's show of defiance meant, shattering the glass bottle like she did. I thought I could convince her by including the backstop that we could erase your memory, but she's having none of it. It's rare that Alice is even cognizant of other people, but maybe having you live here was a step too far for her. She was fine while you were sleeping, but once she saw you awake, it must have roused her sadistic side. Watch your back, Sojiro. She might just come to finish you off. If anything, Alko's warning was an indication that persuading Alice had hit a dead end. Somehow, it doesn't seem like the situation has changed much from the other night, Ozaki. She shot him an unconcerned look in reply. I mean, really, the girl is just itching to finish what you started. Next time I make eye contact with her, I might not walk away alive. This must be what people call a cliffhanger. I'll try to make sure that doesn't happen. Besides, Alice isn't feeling as urgent as I was at the amusement park, so there's always a chance that she'll get over it by herself. You mean her reason for wanting me dead is different from yours? Yeah, the time at the park was because of our strict adherence to the secrecy law. But we've solved it for now. Even Alice understands how creepily earnest you are. So she should have no reason left to worry about confidentiality. At this point, she probably doesn't want you to live here, hence her desire to murder you. She said so matter-of-factly, her eyes cold and serious. Sojiro had hoped that for a trace of deceit or exaggeration, but alas, I did get that impression from her. But it's strange that if that's how she really feels, then surely we can find another solution. Perhaps feeling guilty about putting Alice out, Sojiro looked uncharacteristically concerned. Aoko immediately knew what his words really meant. You mean like keeping you locked inside that tiny glass bottle until we find the magecraft needed to erase your memory? The apathy in her voice until now was gone. Sojiro answered with a simple nod. In truth, it was undoubtedly the easiest solution for all parties concerned. However, Sojiro, I don't break promises. Remember that. She hated taking the easy way out, and that quiet fury was clear in her soft words. As for where that fury was directed, Sojiro was actually aware. The pain in his chest made him regret making her say those words. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. His sudden apology caused her usual sullen expression to return. Aoko had not appreciated how angry she was, let alone the reason for it. To her, his apology had come out of nowhere. I don't get you at all sometimes. What are you apologizing for this time? She stared at Sojiro unblinking. I'm not sure myself. I guess I just felt like I should.
そういう気分になったからだろ
Even if saying he was not sure, Sochiro had answered honestly. Aoko was a loss for words.
う。青崎の言いたいことは分か
But
った。
I get what you're trying to say,
約束を守るって
Aozaki.
いうことは
Keeping a promise is more about the process than the
家
outcome.
庭を守るってことなん
He
だ。
shut her up brazenly on a smile. That face filled with blissful ignorance almost made her smile back instinctively.
当たり前じゃない。落ちなきゃ合ってればいいなんて。
Now that you get it,
恥ずかしくてでき
in
ない
life,
でしょ。
if life were only a means to an end, I couldn't live with myself. Aoko attempted to cover for her embarrassment with a quick retort. Though unintentional, having her true feelings exposed like that made Aoko a little uncomfortable. Finding offense in something that was second nature to Aoko, being made to feel uncomfortable, was not. Though far from being unhappy at the remark, she turned away from its speaker. To disguise her perceived shame, Aoko started up the conversation again.
あなたを見逃すって言うなら、気持ちの問題じゃなくて、
If I say anything, if I say I'll let you go, you can be sure I'm going to do just that, regardless of how I
総十郎
feel.
をここに住まわせ
And
る
if
ことが、
letting you live here is what it takes to keep my promise, I could take it, even if it means Alice and I
脅
butt
かすだけなら
heads.
まだしも。
Even if we're just idle threats, there's no way would let her bottle you up forever.
そっか。青崎があの子を
Thanks.
説得し
Now
な
I
い
get
そうな
why
の
you've
は
given up trying to persuade her. She won't be persuaded anymore.
それで彼女が冷戦中
So
なんだ
that's why you called it Cold War.
別にあんたのためじゃないわ。私は私のために約
It's
束を
not
守っ
as
て
if
るだ
I'm
けだ
doing
し。
this for you.
お
I'm
察
just
し
keeping
の
my
通り、
promise.
私の
Like
や
you
るべ
said,
きこ
I've
と
done
は
my
もう
part.
終わって
Now
る
it's
し
your、turn. Sochiro, the
あとは
ball's
そっ
in your
ちが努
court.
力する番だから、勝手にすれば。
Huh? He replied, tilting his head.
あのね、いい？同居案をなんとか認めさせ
Listen
る
up.
ことができ
I
るのは
spent 2
私だけだ
entire
から。
days arguing and trying to convince Alice to agree to this cohabitation idea because,
けど
hello,
それ以上は無
I
理
was the only one capable of doing it. But
私
I've hit a dead
ここ
end.
から先はノータッチだから。
From now on, I'm taking a
しばらく
hands-off
はアリス
approach.
から守
I'll
ってあ
protect
げ
you
る
from
けど、
Alice for the time being,
そ
but
の
in the
間にあの
meantime,
子にあ
you're
ん
the
たを
only one
認
who
め
can
させる
convince
ことは
her to accept
あ
you,
んたにし
Sochiro.
かできないんだからね、宗十郎。
なんと
What? Sochiro had not expected that at all. Alice Kuonji, the girl in black who kept everyone at arm's length. If Aoko was a modern-day mage in hiding, then Alice was a bona fide witch from the Middle Ages.
青崎君
Azaki,
自分が
do you
どれだ
understand
け
how
難
difficult
しい
that
こ
will
とを
be,
言っ
right?
てるかは
そうね。私もこの件に
Of
関
course
し
I
てだ
do.
けは同情する
And
わ。
now you know how I feel. Aoko stood up from the sofa. This was the end of discussion, at least for now.
私たちがどんな人間かは、
So
おおよそ
now
分
you
か
have
っ
an
たでしょ。
idea of what kind
魔
of
術
people
に
we
関して
are.
はこれ以上
The
立
less
ち入らない
involved you
方
are
が
in
あんたの
magecraft,
た
the
めだから。
better. So I'll
説
spare
明
you
は
any
ここ
further
で。
lectures.
肝心の今後の方針だけど、
The long and the short of it
3ヶ
is,
月間国
you'll be
境
living
線
here
の
for 3
目標
months.
と
The
いうよ
first
り最
objective,
初の試練は、
or
なん
first
と
trial,
かアリスに同
if you
居
like,
人として認め
is
て
to
もら
somehow
う。
get Alice to accept you as her
試練
roommate.
って言った今
A
そういう類のことを言った
You just called
ご
it
ま
a
かして
trial.
もいいことないでしょ。この手のことは
Sugarcoating it
うま
won't
く
do
い
you
か
any
なきゃ粉
favors.
々なわけだし。
After all, blow it, and you're a dead man. Remember? With her cold-blooded remark, Aoko started walking towards the door.
あ、そうそう。
Oh,
宗十郎の部屋だけど、3
About
階
your
に用意
roommate.
しといたから。
It's
2
up on
階
the
の
third
ホールの
floor.
裏側に階段
There's
が
a
あ
set
る
of
から
stairs
使って
on the far side of the
こ
second
こは
floor
寮っ
hall.
てわけでもな
So
い
use
し、
those.
時間
Also,
は自由に使い
this
な
is
さ
not
い。
a dorm, so you're free to spend your time however you
ただし
want.
西階
But
にだけは
whatever
入
you
らないよ
do,
うにね。
do not go into the west wing.
東館は私が借りてるから比較的安全だけど、
So
そ
it
れ
should
で
be
も歩き
relatively
回らない
safe
方
in
が無難
comparison,
だわ。
but still, it's generally safer to not wander around.
基本安全なのは、
In other
あん
words,
た
the
の部
safest
屋
places
ここ
for
だけ
you
よ。
are your room and the drawing room.
中の説明って
Wait,
まさかそれだ
Is
け
that really all you're going to tell me about the
青
mansion?
崎はいろいろおかしい
Hazaki, that's messed up.
もっと
That
大事
seems
な
way
説
more
明が
important
あ
to
ると
explain
思う
than magecraft. He desperately called out to her as she began leaving the drawing room. Aoko could not help but pity
せめ
Sojiro.
てほら案内とか
Can't you at least show me around?
面倒なんでパス。
Sorry,
お
but
登りさん
I'll
を
have to
案内
pass.
するなんて
Showing a country
2
bumpkin
回も
the
やれば
lay
十
of the
分。
land twice is
起
plenty
きたば
enough
っ
for
かり
me.
だし、とりあえず
Plus,
今
you
日
just
は
woke
部屋
up.
で休んだら。
Why not take it easy in your room for
朝
the
に
rest
な
of
っ
the
たら
night?
学校まで案
I'll
内し
show
て
you
あ
how
げ
to
る
get
か
to
ら。
school in the
もっと
morning.
も、私もそう
It's
暇じゃな
not
し。
like
そ
made
ば
of
に
free
ついて
time.
あげられるの
My
は、
obligation to put
期末
you
試験が終わるま
put
でっ
up
て
with
こと
you
で。
ends as soon as the final
1週
exams are
間以
over.
内にアリスと仲良く
So
な
if
る
you
な
don't
り、
mind,
弱みを握るな
so
り
if
しな
you
いと。
if you don't
Ah.
find some way to make nice with Alice, you'll find some way to blackmail her within a week. Well, you know what that means. With barely a wave of goodbye, the student council tyrant walked out. unconsciously clenched his hand as he had raised. Left alone, he was at a complete loss. Then, as if to encourage him, chirp, chirp, chirp! With the sound of lightly fluttering wings, a blue robin appeared out of nowhere. The tiny, chubby bird innocently looked Sojiro up and down. Her bird is now watching him. The blue robin, a bird said to bring happiness according to folklore, flapped his little wings as if to cheer him on. Then, with a flutter, it mercilessly flicked off the lights. It's toying with him. Leaving Sojiro alone in the drawing room, Aoko returned to her bedroom. She closed the door to her room, and as soon as she sat on her bed, she was overcome by an unexpected wave of exhaustion. Sojiro had no way of knowing what she had been preparing for war. In the event that Alice impulsively pulled out a ploy, Aoko had to be ready to react in an instant. She sighed heavily, but not from the fatigue she felt at fighting with Alice. Was I too hard on him? She found a dejected frown. What weighed on Aoko's mind was not Alice. I mean, I'm not going easy on him. Going easy on him wouldn't do him any favors either. Best thing he can do for himself is to lay low. It would be trouble if he wandered around like he owned the place after all. Safest thing for him would be if he holed up in his room, too scared out of his wits to leave it. God, I hope he doesn't think I'm his ally or something. Alice is the lucky one. I'd kill to have him treat me as a stranger. She nodded to herself, agreeing with her take on the situation. For the most part, it was a sound plan. If there was a problem, it would be this. Sorry, Aozaki, I just have one question. Not 10 minutes had passed since leaving him in the drawing room. For Sojiro to shirk off what she had said and visit her room so fast, it was like he had no sense of danger at all. I need to go outside. Of course he would ask to leave the house. Aoko lacked the energy for a sarcastic verb. I won't wander around the mansion. And I'll come right back when I'm finished. I just figured I should check if there was a curfew or anything. Work, is it? How did you know? Sojiro exclaimed in surprise. When it was Aoko who desired to display her shock at him. Fine, you can go. You should make sure you're back on the estate by 10 every night. As long as you keep to the curfew, you can work at your after-school job. Have a barbecue in the garden, do whatever you want. I don't care. The front door is never locked anyway. I get the impression you're angry with me. I'm angry, alright? Just not with you. I'm angry at myself for caring what happens to you. And before you go out, take this pill. Sojiro took the purple pill from her outstretched hand and dubiously put it in his mouth. He told himself that it must have been some kind of medicine. Alright, I'm off then. Thanks for everything, Aozaki. Oh, and don't leave through the window this time, okay? Sojiro laughed himself all the way to the foyer, unsure of what exactly he found funny. Aoko watched him go, both indifferently and amazed all at once. Well, that happened about half a day earlier than planned. He was supposed to take his first pill tomorrow morning. She huffed, ruffling her hair in exasperation, returning to her room. Discerning what made Sojiro tick was a waste of brain matter. In all likeliness, he was more concerned about missing 2 days of work than his own well-being after being bedridden for 2 days. With the day's work behind him, Sojiro returned to the mansion. This must be it. He only set of stairs leading up from the second floor hall. It was just before midnight. This was the scene that awaited him before the rickety staircase. Not much surprise Sojiro, or rather being surprised, had become normal to him. This scene, however, was enough to leave him speechless. The room allotted to Sojiro, no matter how he looked at it, no matter how he ran through it through his mind, was without a shadow of a doubt an attic. That is an attic. The treatment stirred a tinge of anxiety in him. Just as he was about to flop onto the taut sheets of his bed, wondering if he could make this work despite his share of other problems, he noticed an awkward courtesy, so meager as to be useless. Something to use if you get cold. Consider it a gift. The message in the memo pointed to the meticulous personality of the author. The bed had been perfectly prepared, careful setting aside the blanket that had been painstakingly placed on the edge of the bed for him in case he needed it. He looked up at the sky. Though faint, the stars twinkled through the skylight. For a mountain boy, that meager light was more than enough for him. The stark contrast with the drawing room had caught him off guard, but now that he had collected himself, it was not so bad. This room fit his personality. Even if he still was not used to the building, he felt more at ease here than he did in any building in the city. Perhaps it was built on a hill, surrounded by woods. The atmosphere here was a little closer to the mountains where he used to live. Oh, is it normal for there to be fog inside the house? He crooked his neck, pondering over the spectate he had witnessed. On the way to his room, Sojiro had encountered what looked like fog in the foyer on the second floor. The misty fog drifted into a portion of the corridor, reminding him of a swarm of mosquitoes. As he stared at it, he swore he could make out a strange landscape, and as he moved closer to get better look. Again, out of nowhere, here inside the mansion, a little blue bird darted purposefully in front of him.
Tori?
A bird. Tori. The bird caught his attention, stopping him in his tracks. When he looked to check on the fog again, the strange scene had disappeared. This house must be a draft. I'll ask Kawasaki about it tomorrow. He muttered to himself as he sat on the bed. Meager as it was, the starlight peeping in through the skylight calmed him. Yeah, this will work. Exhaling slowly, he laid down. For the time being, he had the essentials needed to live, and his bed was many times softer than it appeared. Thinking his worries seemed smaller than they were, he quickly drifted off to sleep. That was the story of from when he opened his eyes to when he fell asleep. Just like that, the short night following the long night was over. For one thing was true. Sojiro was an optimist to a fault, but it wasn't the end of the world. Now let us rewind 5 hours prior to this glutton for punishment going to bed. It was 7 o'clock in the evening, just after the unproductive discussion between two mages and the boy had ended. Leaving her roommate and the intruder in the drawing room, the girl walked alone through the foyer. From there, she headed to the west wing. These were Alice Kuonji's personal chambers, in which even her roommate Aoko Awazaki seldom dared to step foot. The foyer was illuminated only by pale moonlight. Hard footsteps echoed through the dreary moonlit lobby. In such mansions in Japan, there was no custom for removing shoes at the door. Hence, Alice crossed the foyer in her boots. She only removed them when she relaxed in her bedroom. Suddenly, she remembered something from her childhood. She used to enjoy the feeling of cold hardwood floor on her bare feet and would walk around the foyer on particularly sunny days. After her father affectionately scolded her for it, she never did it again. And I don't know why I bother. Aoko never does. She lets out a quiet sigh. Alice's new roommate, whom she took on after coming to Japan, would not comply with her instructions. Old habits die hard, Aoko would say, changing into her slippers. Aoko might have found it natural to do so, given that she lived a typical Japanese house through middle school, But every time Alice heard her flopping through the foyer, she wanted to cancel their cohabitation. By now, Alice was not particularly bothered by it anymore. Human adaptability was remarkable at times and ungracious at others. The emotional attachments to the past had proved far too brittle under the weight of reality. A little blue bird was perched on the banister. Tiny chirping made Alice stop and look its way.
今夜は放っておくわ。今は青子の問題よ。
Leave him be for tonight. Right now, he's Aoko's problem. The lack of feeling in her voice made the bird tilt its head as it sang, "Tweet, tweet, tweet." It trailed as though questioning its master's uncharacteristic leniency.
約束は約束よ。
A promise is a
今夜ぐらいは
promise.
多めに見ない。
I can at least tolerate him for tonight.
それだけの活
Aoko
躍
and
を
the
した
boy
んだ
did
し。
go to such lengths after all. She said to the bird, her voice betraying her discontent. If you win, I'll let you go. She would keep that promise in spite of the unquenchable desire to fight that burned in her chest.
でも、その後の処遇は別
I
な
didn't make any
条件
guarantees
付きの
after
ゲー
that.
ムに勝ったぐらいで。
She scrapped
い
to
つまで
win,
も得意
even
げ
with
で
a
いられる
handicap
のは
in a
心
little
外だ
game.
わ。
But I won't let her strut around childishly rubbing it in my face forever. Perhaps it was perfectionism born of fastidiousness, but despite her prim demeanor, Alice Kuonji was a sore loser. It did not matter to her magecraft was superior. Losing the game had proven hard to move on from. The little blue bird fluttered its wings in agreement. Drinking in Alice's contempt, it was itching to dive-bomb the invader. It looked like a soldier saluting a superior officer as it preened itself. The blue bird turned to face its master. Tweet, 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 tweet. Its light-hearted tweeting seemed to display a desire to deal with Soljudo first thing in the morning.
そうね。
Indeed,
理由さ
if
え
he
で
gives
き
us
た
a
なら
reason, let us
みんな
put him in a
本棚
bottle,
に入っ
or
てもら
perhaps
い
a
ま
book.
しょう。
Except her words lacked any bite. On the face of it, they were chilling. They were the chilling kind one might come to expect from a witch's lips. But then again, so tame as to remind you of a certain robin's flapping.
しばらくの話よ。
It's only a matter of
それも
time.
一時だけ。
There's
私の
not
我
very
慢も
much
長く
at
は
that.
続かないし。
My patience has its limits.
だいたい、青子も人にか
Aoko
まけ
is
てい
in
られ
no
る立
position
場じ
to
ゃないわ。
dote on others in the
一
first
日も
place.
すれば思い知るで
I
しょ
give her 5 days,
そう
and
す
then,
れば。
when that time came, expelling him would be simple. Alice was well aware her roommate was a pragmatist, with no vision. The situation she created would not allow her to wait around. She could only afford to protect the boy for 3 or 4 days at most. Beyond that, Alice sensed Aoko would crack and say something like, "You take care of this,
それ
Alice."
まで待つか。あるいは、
Will I wait until
私
then,
の我慢
or will I
ど
lose
ち
my
らにして
patience
も
first?
結果は変わらないわ。
Whichever comes first, the end result will be the same. Alice Konji would suffer no more irritations, and protecting a witness, let alone allowing them to live in her mansion, was an indignity. Alice looked up, fascinated by the dense fog that had crawled into the foyer. Above the fireplace was a single mirror. Roughly 3 feet in diameter, it decorated the wall where one might find a painting. Its surface was faintly clouded and vaguely reflected the foyer's
スナー
appearance.
クをなくした影響でしょうね。
This is what I get for
鏡の
using
機能。
the snark.
しばらく
I
は制
suppose
御
that
できないん
means the
だ。
mirror is out of commission for the time being. The little bird joyfully chirped at its master's mumbling. The bird attempted to imply that there was no need for her to lift a finger, not if the nuisance would fall into the mirror of his own accord. Or perhaps, had the little bird not sang, Alice would have come to the same conclusion. For some reason, she recalled an earlier conversation.
これでも一番無難だと思う。
How about now? Still think this is the safest option? In response to her question, the boy inside the bottle shrugged his shoulders and answered. From his perspective, the city and the mansion were no different. It seemed that having just moved from the countryside, everything was something he had never
自
seen
慢できる
before.
ことじゃないが、
I'm not proud of
ま
it,
だ
but
書き物さえ満足
I
にで
still
きな
have
いし、
trouble writing, and the city rules are so complicated that I don't even know right from
何が
wrong.
正しいのかさえ区別がつかない。
More than embarrassment, his voice was full of resentment. He was angry about something, though Alice could not tell what. but
だからどこにいても
that's why
危
no
ない
matter
ことに
where I
変わ
go,
り
I'm
な
always
極端
in
な話
danger.
道
It may
を
not
歩
be
くだけでも
may not be an
人と
exaggeration,
話
but
すだけで
even
も
walking
不
down
安
the
に
street or talking to someone makes me
俺は
anxious.
どこ
No
でだ
matter
ろう
where
と
I
うま
am,
くやってい
there's
け
no
る保証はない
guarantee
け
I'll make it
ど
out.
けどここにはそんな奴に気を使ってく
But
れる人がいる
here,
気
there's
遣ってくれる
someone
理
that
由は物騒なも
might
のっ
show
ぽいけど
concern for a person like
そ
me.
れは本当に
Sure, my
贅
reasoning
沢
is a
なこ
little
とだと
messed
思
up,
うんだ
but I've never known such luxury. Her eyes welled up ever so slightly. Those soft words were something she could not brush off, because they made sense to her. Given that everything in the city was a danger to him, nothing had changed after coming to the mansion. In reality, he had no reason to fear this place in particular. If anything was different from the outside, it would be that someone here was his ally. With that view, he had been entirely sincere. His explanation hadn't contained any flattery towards Alice Kuonji, nor pandering to Aoko Aozaki. He was simply speaking from the heart. I like it here.
今鏡に迷い込まれるのは
Perhaps
迷
having
惑
him wander into the mirror is more trouble than it's worth
鏡
right
の機
now.
能は侵入者の探索
I
に
want to
専念
dedicate
さ
the
せたい
mirror's
し
function to searching for
彼が
intruders.
迷い込みそうに
So
なっ
if
た
it
ら止
looks
め
like
てあ
he's
げ
going
て
to be swallowed up by it, do stop him, will you? The bird shook its feathers at her strange instruction. Alice looked away from the mirror and continued her walk.
あ
The
な
bird
たの
chirped
仕
in
事及
protest.
び
It's your
それ
job,
ぐらいの
Robin.
役には立って
At least get that right, would you? Leaving the bird with an icy retort, she vanished into the west wing. All that remained was the moonlight, and the little blue bird trembling at an perilous prospect of an unprecedented challenge. Well, that name sums up how I feel about this so much. Are you for real? That's the end of that chapter. And I'm not starting a chapter with 40 minutes left, so let's go to archive. No extra archives. Make sure to save. Yes. How many pages of CGs are there? Jeez, there's a lot. There's two new ones, so. Alright. I guess we will end here. Have a good day, everyone.